because there's so much strife in the world. Would you agree? And this has been kind of a difficult summer for it. So not just with weather challenges, but with conflicts of all kinds all over the world, it seems that we become more and more distressed as we see more and more of those news reports. And what we really want to be able to do, I think, is to turn to one another with kindness, rather than thinking that we have to figure out how to save the world in the next few minutes or how to fix everybody else. Maybe we just want to turn to the person next to us and say, "Hi, nice to see you. Good to be looking at your face. I'm so glad you're here." Because just that acknowledgement of kindness is so healing. See, I've lost control of the room. I actually tend to think of that as a good thing, though, so I'm not too worried about it. I heard a story about a mother who was preparing a pancake breakfast for her two sons, who were 3 and 5 years old. Kevin was 5, Ryan was 3. And they were arguing with each other over who was going to get the first pancake. And their mother, seeing an opportunity to teach her boys values, like we're talking about this morning, said to them, "You know, if Jesus were sitting here, he would not be arguing about the pancakes. He would say, 'Let my brother have the first pancake. I can wait.'" And Kevin turned to his younger brother and said, "That's a great idea. Ryan, you be Jesus." Because it's hard sometimes when we're feeling we need something to consider somebody else first. And I think that our mistake is in thinking that we're in need, identifying with needs and wants instead of with essence. It's very tempting when we get to the stage of life that some of us are at to begin to be distressed with our physical bodies. I like that noise from the peanut gallery around that one. Yes, we start to get distressed and annoyed and frustrated with the fact that we can't do things exactly the way that we did them before. We don't want to adapt. You know, when we're little kids and we're growing up, we're looking forward to growing up, and every time our feet outgrow our shoes, or every time we have to go to the next grade and get used to a new teacher, or whatever it is, we take that in stride because it's part of what we're doing as growing up. But for some reason, when we get to be adults and our bodies begin to shift in terms of what they're able to do, we get very grumpy about that. It's like, well, I want to be able to do it the way I did it before. Well, no, you already did that. It's time to learn a new skill. And that has to do with honoring the body temple also in its shifts that it's going through now. And the challenge is that we think this is who we are. And so we're very, and I should speak for myself, I think that I can be, and maybe some of you too, can do ourselves a kind of thought violence toward our own physical bodies, rather than honoring this temple of the Spirit that has been giving us so much for so many years. We think that we're the body, and then we get distressed because it isn't doing what we want it to do anymore. Are you following me here? And so what I want to encourage us to do is to move into a realm of kindness that not only is extended to other people, but also to ourselves. We really need kindness now more than ever. So I wanted to start off in speaking about kindness in an unkind world. The appearance is that it is an unkind world, and yet the truth of it is that it's made up of human beings whose essence really is connected to kindness, to love. So I wanted to start off with an image. You'll notice that this particular kitten is a different one that is being cleaned by Mama Cat here. Somehow or other, this strange family configuration has come into being. I think that what happens with every species is that when loving, nurturing instincts kick in and we're not so worried about our own needs and getting our needs met, we're able to be more generous to others. And even in the animal kingdom, there are unusual situations in which there is love, and there is nurturing, and there is welcoming extended to somebody that's been orphaned or lost, even though they don't seem to belong. One of the things about kindness that I think is a mistake is that we think that it's something that we teach kids, That's not really true. We do teach them about sharing, but kindness is such an interesting quality in human beings. When we are kind, we've discovered now, our brains release opiates, serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin. Peering into a kind brain, we see activation in the same brain regions that light up when we receive a gift. When we give, we feel like we're getting a reward. That's how it affects our brain. So what happens is our givingness actually boosts our immune system. It can increase our longevity. It can combat depression. And also, oxytocin is a neuropeptide that works like a hormone in our bodies, reducing fear, anxiety, and stress, while increasing feelings of trust, calm, safety, and connectedness. On a biological level, it improves our digestion, reduces inflammation, lowers blood pressure, and improves healing. It is the same chemical that is released when we feel love and have sex. No wonder kindness feels so good. It releases feel-good opiates in the brain that we make normally. Now, you might be tempted to think that kindness is a social skill that we're taught by our parents, along with saying please and thank you. But new studies suggest that kindness is actually hardwired into us. Even 18-month-old children who are relatively unburdened by social norms show strong tendencies to help others, it says in the Positive Cyclopedia. At age 2, children prefer to be given a jelly bean and have another child get one rather than just getting one themselves. Or even getting two. You know, like one for you, yours for me. Instead, they'd rather the other child get one also. So what happens when we're kind is it actually reflects back to us. It is a kind of a joyous bounce back. And I think that we overcome the idea that we are needy or that we're in want or that we're in lack when we're being kind to somebody else, when we're going out of our way to be generous to somebody else. Our focus is not on us, then it's on them. And what happens is we begin to feel more confident, powerful, and freer because we're in an activity that's making a difference. It has an effect on us. MedicalDaily.com says, acquiring sympathy is actually an intrinsic component of our being. When we feel physical pain, personally, ourselves, part of our brain lights up in response to that. But the same thing happens and the same parts of the brain light up when we see somebody else in physical pain. It's as if we're hardwired to have the ability to imagine ourselves experiencing what others go through, which is otherwise known as empathy. The mirror neurons in our brains allow us to see somebody else's experience and experience it as if it's our own. And this shows us that our ability to relate to another person's experience is native to us. We can't separate from it. Well, of course not, because as we learn in Science of Mind, there's only one. There's only one. So of course, when we mirror each other, we have some kind of feeling for what the other person is experiencing, especially if it's somebody we know. Think about how you feel when you see a child crying. And now think about if that's your child. There's an amp up in our level of empathy, sympathy, concern, desire to alleviate that discomfort. And so the more we look upon each other as connected to us, the more likely we are to have that fullness of feeling that we need. I came across this little video on YouTube. This is a school up in Washington State where kindness is one of the things that is taught as a value.
Welcome to Puget Sound Community School. We're thrilled to have you here.
Everyone smiles in the same language.
Enjoy being with someone. Don't wait for people to be friendly, show them how.
Shoot for the moon, even if you miss, you'll land among the stars.
The plan is we're going to head over to the library and we're going to put your kind thought notes inside of the library books as our kindness activity. Just think of yourselves, we're an extension of the Karma Army.
We're going to go in and put them in randomly selected books. I'm excited. super excited, actually, because we're making a difference in someone's day.
I love this. This is a big part of what it means to be part of a community school. We go out into the community and we interact.
We started a school that's based on kindness. I mean, I've never heard of that before.
Okay, appreciations.
I appreciate Juju.
I appreciate playing Santa's helper this morning.
The 30 views that I got on my website.
I appreciate Steve Miranda. I think he's awesome.
At this base is what we're trying to do, is basically help demonstrate and build high character. We believe that when students have that as a basis, an environment starts to unfold. When we hire staff, the one qualification we look for is people who have integrity. What comes here then, on top of that, are academics. There are no required academic classes at our school, because we believe that when you build this, human beings naturally do this.
What does Telemachus know now that he couldn't possibly have known then?
We can go from a class like the Odyssey or dissection, they're literally dissecting rodents today, to things like cookie decorating. So it is an incredible range. Students are here because they want to be here. They're doing what they want to do because we let them do what they want to do. And interestingly enough, when you put kids in that environment, what they want to do is develop themselves and grow.
It's so much more fun, and I enjoy waking up and going to school.
Here we go 5 days a week, and I'm like, yay.
I didn't think kids were like this.
You'll see that the rooms all have windows. Why are you doing that? The idea of that is to be able to see what's happening in your community school. This is a place built on trust and other character. You don't need a closed door locker here. It's open space. So here's what you get here.
Kindness is such a great thing, and you really should learn because, it comes up so much in life.
Learning about kindness is just as important as learning about math and reading, because being kind to others is, it's really big.
I appreciate my mom a lot.
I want to appreciate the potluck last night.
Lunch with Margot and sight reading.
Sundry was especially awesome today, thanks, Leanna.
For May and Jimmy.
I do this because it's fulfilling, and it's fulfilling every moment of every day. The byproducts of me being happy with my job happens to be a bunch of happy kids who are pursuing things that satisfy them.
You can make a difference in someone's day, and I feel like a lot of people are unaware of it just because they don't get to do stuff like this.
So isn't that fun? I mean, imagine, it takes advantage of kids' natural tendency to want to be kind to one another and builds on that rather than teaching them to suspect other people and be cynical and not very hopeful. So sometimes what happens in our lives when we get caught up the way that we have recently with weather challenges, with conflicts in the world, with Mercury retrograde, whatever it is that's bugging you right now, we sometimes feel like we've lost a sense of kindness. We've lost a sense of kindness from other people toward us and from us toward other people. But what happens when we intentionally decide we're going to be kind to somebody is it takes us out of ourselves. It builds hope about what more might be possible, not only in us, but also in the people that we're giving to. We are maybe, we who temporarily have more are giving to somebody who temporarily has less. When the situation is reversed, we want to be open to receiving as well. And it reminds us and others of what our true identity really is. I mean, here again you see a couple of creatures who wouldn't necessarily expect to be being affectionate with one another, and yet there they are, they're best buds. And so certainly if the animal kingdom can do this, we human beings can reach across to the animal kingdom, to the plant kingdom, to our brothers and sisters who are merely ethnically different than we are. They're not completely different species. So we want to be reminded that when we are helping others, we're also helping ourselves. And when we're helping ourselves, we're also helping others. That self-care has this interesting connection to other people too. Because once again, if we go back to the idea that there's only one, that God is all there is, that is what's in expression everywhere in everybody, then we have to also go to the next step, which is what it says in A Course in Miracles, all that I give is given to myself. So to whomever I am kind, I'm also extending kindness to me, because there's really only one. And when I treat myself well, I'm also extending that outward to others, because they're connected to me. So they can't help but receive some of the flow of that good that I'm offering to myself, and also I can't help but receive the good that I'm offering to others. It's connected. It's all one flow. And so self-care sometimes looks like extending kindness to others. Now, one of the things that I love about this particular image is, look at this guy right here. He's making sure the flowers don't fall out. Either that or he's getting ready to take the flowers out, but he's being very mindful about the way he's handling those flowers. If you look at him, he's as focused on the flowers as this guy is. There's something happening between them. This act of kindness took a huge amount of courage. It was an example, but it was extending kindness to the man who was standing there with the gun. And that kindness is being received, actually, and reflected in a sense. Michael Beckwith, a number of years ago, did an interview for his own newsletter, and he said this: as the love activity of God begins to radiate as an activity of our awareness, we notice that our tendency to hold on to grudges and resentment is lessened. We notice that not only do we no longer have the desire to hold on to resentments, but now we may even have a desire to return good for apparent evil. We may experience the desire to pray for the individual and to send good for evil. This is the real meaning of forgiveness, to actually give good for negativity. We are reflecting the true nature of the person that isn't visible in the moment back to them. Psychologist Max Krasnow from University of California, Santa Barbara said, when past researchers carefully measured people's choices, they found that people all over the world were more generous than the reigning theories of economics and biology predicted they should be. The truth is, we as human beings are more generous and kind than the theories of economics would predict that we should be. Because we have to suppress it to be as cynical as we want to be. Our natural instinct is to take the risk and be kind. That's our natural instinct. Carl Jung said, as far as we can discern, the sole purpose of human existence is to light a candle in the darkness of mere being. The sole purpose for our existence is to light a candle. To light a candle for who? For ourselves? For each other. We know where we are, so I guess if we're lighting a candle, it's really to help other people. Amelia Earhart said, a single act of kindness throws out roots in all directions, and the roots spring up and make new trees. So if we're living from the vision of a world that works for everyone, then every single one of us has a responsibility to expand kindness to ourselves and to other people. Now, how many of you did something nice for yourselves this morning? You made yourself a nice breakfast, you got up and got dressed in something that you like, you drove here in a car that had enough gas for you to get here. You know, you're in a place with all these people who love you. Even if this is your first Sunday here, by the way, all these people love you. There is a oneness in the spirit that is a presence of love. That's why it used to be when we go to a Silomar or to CBEC or one of our church summer conferences, it was such a culture shock to come back after that week. Because once you spend a week with people who spend all their time greeting each other on the grounds, whether they know each other or not, singing together, sharing with one another, doing workshops together, you begin to feel like this is how the world should be. Everybody being connected, everybody caring about everybody else. Then you go back to real life and it's like, oh yeah, that's right. Don't make eye contact. Somebody might ask me for something. But our innate goodness comes out when we are in an environment where we feel it's safe to be that kind of good. Would you agree? And we see it in our children too. My grandson had a terrible time in 1st and 2nd grade. We discovered later it's because he was being bullied. But he wouldn't say it at the time. This year, he's in his first week of 5th grade, and instead of getting calls from the teacher about problems he's having, they got a call from the teacher saying what a great first week of school he'd had. He's no longer in the class with that kid. So being in a safe environment made a big difference in terms of his ability to behave according to the norms that were required for him in his grade level. It made it safe for him. Albert Schweitzer, who was renowned for his kindness. In fact, I remember once Jack Parr. Anybody alive remember Jack Parr? Jack Parr had Albert Schweitzer on once, and he'd also visited him in Africa. And he was talking about in his office in Africa, Albert Schweitzer had a pile of sugar on the corner of his desk for the ants. And I think that, I believe it was Jack Parr, but somebody was there visiting him who didn't know, and saw all these ants and brushed them off of the desk, brushed everything off of the desk. And when Schweitzer came in and saw that, he said, "Why did you do that? Those were my ants." So the kindness that extended from this man and the sense of humor, and he said, Albert Schweitzer, not Jack Parr, sometimes our light goes out, but is blown into flame by another human being. Each of us owes deepest thanks to those who have rekindled this light. Ernest Holmes, our founder, said in this thing called you, expectancy speeds progress. Not expectation, which is connected to certain specific outcomes, but expectancy, which is an attitude of being open to goodness and kindness and being in a welcoming position for it, even though it may not yet have shown up. Being available for it, looking for it, welcoming it with expectancy rather than expectation. Does that make sense? That being in that expectancy of good invites it into our experience, looking to be a person of influence, of increase in the world, who is extending random acts of kindness, lifts us up into that space. Harry Ward Beecher said, "A helping word to one in trouble is often like a switch on a railroad track, an inch between wreck and smooth, rolling prosperity, an inch." We often don't know how a word of kindness makes a difference in somebody's day. I just read a thing about veterans who've come back with PTSD, some of whom are being taught how to surf. This one guy who's become passionate about surfing said, "It was the last thing I was going to check off my bucket list before I committed suicide. But being able to learn to surf changed everything." Who knew when they gave him his first surfing lesson what that meant? That simple act of kindness, what that was going to mean in that man's life. So we can't see into the hearts and minds of people all the time to know what a moment of kindness might do for them. But in the moment that we can remember to do it, we have to assume it made a difference for that one in that moment. You know the story of the starfish? Yeah? The old guy gets up one day, after his meditation, he goes out and sees a young guy dancing down the end of the beach. And he thinks, well, that's a great way to start off the day. And he starts walking toward the guy, and he finally realizes the guy isn't dancing. He's bending over and picking stuff up and throwing it into the water. And as he gets over closer to him, he sees that it's a young man who's picking up starfish, and the beach is covered with them. Picking up starfish, tossing them out past the tide, whatever you call that, out past that so that they can be back in the water. And the older guy says to him, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm throwing the starfish back into the water because when the tide goes out, they're going to die, being exposed like this, and getting them back out into the water." And the older guy says, "Well, young man, certainly you realize there are thousands of starfish on this beach. It can't possibly make that much difference." And the young man pauses for a second, And then he bends down, he picks up another one and tosses it out past the tide laying there. He says to the guy, it made a difference to that one. Maybe our only reason for being somewhere in the moment is because we're going to make a difference for that one. And that's enough. If there's only one that you made a difference for is everybody and you. And if somebody makes a difference for you, it's not just you and them, it's everybody that got touched by that in that moment. And so it isn't, I think sometimes that when we're wanting to help people, but we don't know what to say, somebody has lost a loved one or a pet, or they're in ill health, or something else is going on and they're struggling. And we want to say something kind to them. We want to be present for them. And we don't know what to say. So we don't call, or we don't go over or send a card or something because we don't want to say the wrong thing. We don't want to upset them more. We don't necessarily want to be upset ourselves. Here's the secret to that. Showing up matters. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to know anything. You can be awkward and terrible at it, but you showed up, and it made a difference to that one. Don't wait until you can do it well. Do it now. And I want to close with this little story to remind you of what a difference it can make, even if you don't know what to say. A young boy who asked his father if he could go across the street to visit with an elderly neighbor was sitting outside on the porch. And the old gentleman had just lost his beloved wife of many years, and the family had spoken of how tough it must be on the poor man. So the father said, yes, of course, go. The little boy carefully crossed the street to the house directly across from his own and approached his old neighbor and then climbed up on his lap. And the father watched quietly, wondering what kind of conversation these two might be having. And pretty soon the young boy came back home again, and he and his father went inside their own house. And as they did, his father said to him, well, what did you talk about? Nothing, was the reply. But I saw you sitting on his lap. What were you saying? His son replied, I didn't say anything, Daddy. I just helped him cry. I just helped him cry. Sometimes it matters to that one that you show up. That's kindness. I think we sometimes think we have to be good at something to make a difference. We really don't. If you're the one who's there, you're the one who's there to make the difference. Not knowing how is immaterial. If you're there, you're the right one. And if someone is kind to you, they're the right one, even if they don't do it very well in the moment. It makes a difference to all of us. So I encourage you to go out with expectancy, pick up that next starfish, whatever his or her name might be, toss him back into the living water, because it will make a difference to that one. Namaste. And look at these guys. Oh, thank you. Bless your hearts. Bless your hearts. And we want to welcome back our wonderful musicians, Ross, James, and Amanda.
This song came to me when I was in Africa on the shores of Lake Malawi. It was after hours. The stars were out like I've never seen before.